July 2025 is bringing us, in my opinion at least, the biggest astrological transit of the entire year. Finally, Uranus is moving into Gemini. This is going to take place on July 7th. Uranus has spent about 7 years in Taurus, so this is a really big transition, and it's going to have a huge impact on society as a whole and technology. Now, before we get into it, my name is Sydney. I'm a professional astrologer. I've been studying astrology for over 15 years. It's my passion. I love it so much. I do have my website in the description for those of you who would like to book a reading with me. I also have an email list, so feel free to sign up for that for exclusive promotions and astrological insights. Also, do not forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to leave me a comment letting me know where Uranus is going to be transiting for you. All right, let's get into the video. The first thing and most important thing I really want to address about Gemini Uranus is how much of an impact and influence it's going to have on technology in society and how society interacts with technology especially. This is because both Gemini and Uranus actually have a lot to do with technology. Gemini has more to do with how technology helps us interact with one another, like cell phones, email, text messages. Uranus has more to do with how technology actually helps us progress as a society. Think of the difference as like Gemini being a telephone and Uranus being an X-ray machine. You know what I mean? Like Uranus has a little more to do with like building a rocket ship essentially. So even though they kind of have like different associations when it comes to technology, Uranus being in the sign of Gemini is going to influence technology as a whole. Uranus also rules over surprises, it rules over progress, unexpected events. It's very much like a rebellious planet. It's also very much associated with like anything that's kind of freakish or weird. That said, it's not surprising that as we near Uranus's transition into Gemini, we're seeing the complete rise in AI. So I really want to discuss especially that when Uranus does move into Gemini and as it, makes its trek through the sign, we're going to see a lot more weirdness when it comes to technology, especially AI. It's also going to impact how we interact with one another, like on a social, in a social way. So for example, people might be kind of making the conscious choice to interact with AI more than they do other people. I think we're already kind of seeing some of this. Like I saw something the other day about how some guy proposed to AI or like some chat bot that he created. It's like the movie Her. People are literally going to be opting for connection with robots and computers and machines more than humans. I mean, this isn't going to be everybody, obviously, but we are going to see kind of an uptick in this. Of course, we're still going to have natural human connection, but there are going to be some people out there that might prefer robots. I mean, I'm completely serious here. Another thing we're going to see when it comes to technology and Gemini Uranus is a major, major shift to social media. So this is probably going to look like a few things. One, we might have more laws prohibiting certain groups of people from using social media, like specifically like teenagers and young kids. I can definitely see that happening. We might also have more censorship. I can also see that taking place. Another thing we're going to see here is a lot of uncanny valleyness. So it's going to get to a point where you might not even be able to tell if an account on social media is being run by a real life human being or AI. So actually, like the content that you actually consume on social media is going to become very, very different. It's just going to be really hard to discern between like fact and fiction, essentially. And this difficulty when it comes to discerning between fact and fiction, it's definitely going to infiltrate some of the more popular creators on social media. Like it's going to impact appearances on like a physical level. This is because Uranus actually has a really big influence on plastic surgery. Gemini, of course, having a big influence on like trends. So we're definitely going to see more plastic surgery, but especially ones that veer into kind of an unfathomable direction. It actually reminds me of the movie White Chicks, where one of the characters was like, or one of the characters was talking about how like they got their knees done and it made them taller. And they were like, you can do that? It kind of reminds me of that. Like, I do believe that we're going to start seeing different types of plastic surgery that kind of go beyond what we thought was possible. Now, this leads me to an actual kind of positive note about Uranus and Gemini. we're definitely going to be having more technological advancements when it comes to medicine. And in my opinion, this kind of corresponds very well with Neptune moving into Aries, Neptune having a lot to do with healing, spirituality, Aries having a lot to do with the body. So these two planets having, making these big transitions into new signs, it's definitely going to impact medicine and technology when it comes to actual healthcare. So on a positive side, I do think this is going to lead to better health all around. Now, this is where it does get kind of tricky because better health, yes, like access and, progress in technology for health is definitely going to become increased and improved upon. However, the predicament with Uranus Gemini and its influence on society as a whole is we're probably going to see more cults. I did talk about this with Neptune moving into Aries. I made a video about that quite a bit ago, so you can check that out too. But we're going to see an uprising of groups of people that are like, they just become so much more kind of like enmeshed, I guess, in their chosen group of like certain beliefs and doctrines and rules. Like it's going to be a little more compartmentalized, I guess, where people just, it's not going to be as like, oh, love thy neighbor, essentially. I think that we're going to see some personalities rise up that are extremely conniving and very manipulative. And also, they have that charm. So I think people are going to start to kind of pair off into different groups, some of which may legitimately take on like cultish qualities. And this is also because Gemini is, as a sign, it has a lot to do with society and socialization. It can also be, Gemini as a sign, very much a mirror. I don't want to say Gemini is like a follower by any means, but when we're looking at it, it's the twins, it's the set of twins. So there is this mirroring quality to Gemini. So yeah, this could note people, kind of latching on to certain ideologies and beliefs, whether or not those beliefs are like logical or rational. And of course, this has been going on since the dawn of time. So it's not necessarily new. It's not really a revelation or anything, but I think we're going to see more of it. And this is going to tie into health because I think we're going to start seeing a little more, even though progress is being made when it comes to health and medicine, we are also going to see some people that might be opting out of that, unfortunately. So we might see like an uptick in, I don't want to fearmonger, but we might see an uptick in like certain diseases or illnesses that maybe were already eradicated that kind of make their way back. And that's also because Gemini, and being such a social sign, it kind of notes like the passing along of traits and qualities, and that can include like an illness, like things can spread. I guess that's really what I'm trying to say is like ideologies, beliefs, and even illnesses can spread far and wide. Now, speaking of things spreading far and wide, Gemini also has a lot to do with news and journalism. And Uranus, like I said earlier, it's shocking, it's surprising, it's unconventional. It has a lot to do with humanity as a whole. That said, this can lead to like data breaches. It can also lead to a lot of information being like projected outwards, especially information that formerly was maybe really hard to access, very much kept under wraps. That is, again, like I just said, in part to that shocking, unexpected nature of Uranus. And Gemini is very much like the cat's out of the bag energy. It's playful. It is very gossipy. It loves to talk. It loves to chat. It loves to connect. So, putting two and two together, you can definitely kind of, infer, whatever, that, more information that was supposed to be kept under wraps is going to be leaked out, basically. And this is going to make it coinciding with like the potential rise of like certain cults. It's going to make it even more kind of desirable and lucrative, I guess, for people to stop listening to professionals and authority figures and start veering off into, maybe listening to people who don't actually really know what they're talking about, kind of. You know what I'm saying? Like people are going to start listening to voices that maybe just they're not actually in the know per se, but because there's so much distrust for government and other like societal institutions, people might latch on to other people who kind of pretend to know better, basically. So that's where the energy gets a little bit risky for sure. Now, because we are going to be seeing so many technological advancements, and a lot of them are going to be very new, we are going to have some unprecedented legal issues, I think, especially relating to AI and like intellectual property theft, things like that. So I do think this time period will be beneficial in some ways because I think it's going to, we're going to reach a point where we realize like, okay, we actually do have to protect people's intellectual and creative properties. But the road to getting there might be really, really wonky and strange because, again, it's unprecedented. We haven't seen it before. So there is going to be this kind of trial and error when Uranus is moving through Gemini when it comes to like certain laws. And we're also going to have some trial and error when it comes to government. Now, I can't really speak on other countries. I live in America. So that's the country that I know best and that I'm like most educated on. But in America specifically, I do think that we are going to enter we're already in a really weird time politically, but I think it's going to get even weirder and more shocking and unconventional just because, again, Uranus, that's like everything that it's about. And we're going to become a lot more conscious of the fact that something kind of needs to give. We need something that has never been done before in America. And I think we're going to get it. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be swift and quick, but that's kind of part of the journey of Uranus moving through Gemini is like giving power back to the people. And that's also true with Neptune moving in Aries too. There is this need for, the smaller, less privileged and less fortunate groups to kind of rise up and take power back, reclaim authority, reclaim their joy. That's another really big thing here. So don't be surprised if we do see a lot of social conflict, or more of it, I should say. We're already seeing it, but a lot more in America. I don't think it needs to be doom and gloom though. It's part of just the bigger picture of getting more progress. That is the benefit of Uranus energy in general, is it does show progress. Sometimes the road to getting there is really weird. There can be a lot of back and forth. There can be 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Uranus is a very unpredictable, eclectic, and erratic planet. It's very inconsistent. So the road to reaching progress, it's not going to be ABC 1, 2, 3. It's not going to be linear. It's going to be like all over the place. But the end goal is progress. There's a rebellious spirit. Again, there's this need for liberation. There's this need for like resilience, defiance. So I do think ultimately we're probably going to have a lot more protests, but I do think we're going to get quite a lot done, at least in America, because again, there's this need to bring power back to the people. Okay, so that's pretty much the gist of what we can expect with Uranus moving through Gemini. I understand that it was a lot about technology, it was a lot about society as a whole, but those are pretty much the really big themes that this transit is going to bring us. So it's going to be kind of a bumpy, wild ride. I'm hoping, though, that it pays off in the end and it gets us where we really need to be going as a society, as a whole, as humanity, basically. Okay. Now we are going to get into transits and what each rising sign can expect depending on, where Uranus and Gemini will be transiting for you in the housing system. Now, if you are like me and you utilize the Placidus housing system, just remember, just because Uranus is moving into Gemini, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be moving into a new house for you, unless, of course, that house is like Gemini at 0 degrees. But other than that, Uranus is probably going to still be staying in whatever house it's moving through right now. However, it's still going to change the dynamic because it is moving into a new sign. Now, that said, if I were you, I would just look at both horoscopes. So look at the one that, Uranus and Gemini is like the house that it's still in right now for you, because you're still going to get some insight out of that. And then, of course, you can look to the house in the future that Uranus and Gemini will be moving into for you. So both horoscopes are very important. One is just happening like right now for those of you where Uranus is not immediately moving. And then, of course, the other one is going to be something you can look forward to. I hope that made sense. That was wordy. Let's start with Aries ascendant or Gemini Uranus moving through the 3rd house. So this is really important when it comes to your actual community and your social life. The 3rd house has a lot to do with communication, socialization. So this is going to really impact the actual groups that you hang out with. This could lead to unexpected changes in your social life, such as maybe letting go of old friends and gaining new ones. Maybe you find yourself immersed in a brand new community, especially one that you just didn't expect to find yourself in. And it might be based on like a change in hobbies, a change in interest. So let's say you suddenly develop an interest in like marine biology. I don't know. So then you start spending time, in wherever marine biologists like to go spend time. That's what you start doing. So you make new friends by doing that. You get what I'm saying? Like this can note a big change to your social life as a result of a shift in interests and hobbies. Now, that said, for some people, this could note undergoing a change to your actual education in life. So the third house, it does have a lot to do with education. It's usually lower education, like pre-K through high school. But this can also be like a self-taught endeavor that you embark upon. But undergoing a shift to your educational journey is also very common here. Uranus is just going to bring a lot of unexpected surprises like to your actual studies. And that can, of course, include your academic studies as well. And when it comes to technology, this transit is very, very important. You kind of need to be a little bit more mindful about what you share online. This isn't meant to scare you. It doesn't even necessarily mean that something unfavorable is going to happen, but Uranus moving through Gemini, like in the third, can definitely kind of warp or twist the way that you communicate with others and also your online presence. Now, on one hand, this could note a complete rebrand with your online presence. So undergoing a total shift in how you present yourself online and even the type of content you make if you are a content creator. But for some, it does note a need for a little bit more like cybersecurity, being more mindful about like, your passwords and things like that, not falling for scams, all of that stuff. So you just want to be a little more mindful on the internet. Another thing that can happen here too is your mental health can undergo a huge shift. That's because the third house does have a lot to do with cognition. So the good news here is like you could receive a diagnosis, you could receive some type of clarity or closure relating to like a certain mental health ailment that has been plaguing you. So gaining like newfound awareness of like, oh, okay, now I kind of understand what has been making it a little bit hard for me to like exist through life essentially. So in some cases, this can also bring about a brand new like medicinal regimen just because Uranus does have a lot to do with medicine. Gemini has a lot to do with like oral consumption. So this could note like, a new prescription or something like that. It's not inevitable. And as always, astrology is not a substitute for actual medical advice. You always need to seek out a medical professional for that type of information. Now we're going to talk about Taurus ascendant or Uranus moving through the second house. So Uranus Gemini moving through the second house, this is going to bring big changes to your finances. A really great thing about Gemini is how dynamic and versatile it is. This can lead to multiple sources of income. Now, before you get worried, no, this does not mean that you're going to need multiple sources of income per se. Like, I don't want you to think that this means you're like going to the poorhouse, so you need to have more than one source of income. But it could just bring about a lot of financial opportunity for you and a lot of lucrative financial connections too. So hanging around people and meeting people who can propel you on a financial level. For some of you, this can note getting a new business partner. You know what I mean? Like having some type of social connection where you two make money together. And with new financial opportunity, this can lead to accepting a job or making a pivot in your career that you just did not expect to make. Like maybe you wind up doing something for money that never in a million years did you think that would happen. Just because again, Uranus is so shocking and unexpected. Gemini, really good for passive income. So this is a transit that can bring about some type of passive income. So you can like multiply your income, you can have multiple sources of income, and you can experience some passive income as well. It might even be that there's some type of like technological advancement or shift to how you make money. So for example, like maybe you get a job in tech, you know what I mean? Maybe there's some new tech component to the work that you do that shifts how much money you're making. Now, because the second house, aside from money, it also has a lot to do with your sense of stability and security, your actual foundation in the world. This can bring about some changes to your actual environment and how secure you feel in yourself. So for some, this could note some type of relocation or move. It might even just be like a shift to I know this is so random, but like a shift to the property you live on. Like maybe you undergo some type of weather-related change that kind of shifts the actual like environment that you live in from like a weather standpoint. I know it sounds really random. In my opinion, Uranus has a big influence on weather and climate. So I'm just kind of trying to find ways to like express that some of these changes it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to like pack up and move. I mean, you could, depending on what Uranus is also an aspect to in your chart, but it very well could literally be that your town and your local environment kind of undergoes a shift due to weather related changes. And this can also extend to some type of community-based shift as a result of some type of political change as well. So maybe you grew up in a like historically more like Democratic town, but for whatever reason, the pendulum swings and it becomes a little bit more Republican or vice versa. Let's talk about Gemini Ascendant or Gemini Uranus transiting the first house. This one is like kind of a catch-all just because the first house has so much to do with your actual self, your identity, your life path, your motivations, your reactions, what drives you, what fuels you, how you defend yourself. It is like your core, almost like your biological being. It is the most like primitive part of who you are. So Gemini Uranus moving through the first can literally change so much about your life. On one hand, it can actually change your appearance and your physical body. So if you've been like thinking about making a big change to what you look like or your style or your aesthetic, this is par for the course here. It can also lead to a shift in health. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, so you don't need to be nervous. It could lead to a positive shift. You know, it could note some type of health ailment. You finally get closure. Maybe you finally receive a diagnosis and you're able to actually start beginning your journey towards some type of like new medical regimen that actually really helps you and promotes longevity and just, a healthy way of life. So that's a way that this can manifest. Now, aside from like your actual appearance, your general identity and character can also undergo a shift. This can be caused by a complete change in your belief systems, a complete change in what motivates you, what inspires you. I know it sounds really vague, but you kind of just have to expect that pretty much everything in your life is going to shift as a result of a change in self. Think of it kind of that way. Like a lot of the changes in your life are in a good way, like going to be orchestrated by you personally, but that's because you're changing, you're growing, you're developing. And I will say you are going to be prone to a lot of unexpected curveballs during this time, which are also going to force you to undergo a lot of changes in your identity and your character. It's very much kind of a discussion of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Like on one hand, you're going to be introducing a lot of these changes to your own life. On the other hand, you are going to be subjected to a lot of changes, which will in turn force you to make the changes you need to make. So it's kind of a cycle. And I will say you can undergo a shift to your education, your academic life, your career, your professional goals, your environment, your social life. That's another big one here. Like you're not exempt from that. You can definitely make new friends, leave some behind, find yourself immersed in a brand new group of people. Now, I will say for my Gemini Ascendant babies out there, this is a good time to kind of share yourself online. Like if you've been thinking about becoming a little more like publicized, this is a really good time to do so, just because Gemini Ascendant is naturally like, it's very much about sharing self. It's very sociable. It needs to connect. Even if you're more on the shy side, social connection is still really important for you, okay? So, this could note maybe like starting some type of social media account or starting a blog or writing a book that you go on to publish. Maybe you're an artist and you make the decision to finally start sharing your art or, start monetizing it, whatever the case may be. You might be receiving a little more attention from the public eye, especially in online spaces or any space where like technology is a significant factor. Now we're going to talk about Cancer Ascendant or Gemini Uranus transiting the 12th house. Whew. This is a pretty big one. A lot of this transit is going to be about uncovering deep-seated feelings. I know, feelings are so annoying to deal with sometimes. But deep-seated feelings and especially like memory, what's the word I'm looking for? Memory resurfacing, basically. Like anything that you have repressed or conveniently forgotten about, anything you've been sweeping under the rug, it's going to come out during this time. You can have a lot of revelations about your childhood, especially your childhood pertaining to like the more prepubescent, like adolescent years, like between ages, like I want to say 9 to 12, 13. Those are the years that can really start to come back to you in memory. So if you are someone who you like a lot of people out there, like they don't even remember their childhoods, you can undergo like this complete, recollection of memories and events and circumstances that bring you a lot of clarity. That's a really big thing that can happen here. Now, another thing that can happen with Uranus Gemini moving through the 12th house is you might be a little more prone to some technology related issues, just because the 12th house is very foggy. So anything you put inside of it, anything moving through it can start to become a little warped, a little hard to navigate. And because Uranus Gemini is so much about technology, this is definitely part of that. I really want to emphasize to you specifically, if Gemini Uranus is moving to the 12th, you need to be mindful of scams on technology. You need to be super, super mindful. Don't fall for them. Get educated if you're not, like when it comes to spotting them. You need to be absolutely mindful. There is kind of a naivety and a vulnerability to the 12th house. So Gemini Uranus moving through it, it can just, it can make it a little hard to kind of spot. Again, the discernment between fact and fiction can become very skewed. And you also need to be mindful about the company you keep. This is not meant to scare you. It's just meant to help prepare you. When it comes to the 12th house, given how foggy it is, when Uranus is like transiting the 12th, especially in a sign like Gemini, which again, very sociable, you can attract some people in your life or interact with people who they're not the best. Maybe they don't have the best character. Maybe they don't have the best intentions. So you need boundaries, you need discernment, and you need to be very real with yourself. Like take off the rose-colored glasses. It's not going to suit you during this time. You also want to be mindful about what you share online. Again, this isn't meant to scare you. It's just meant to help prepare you. So you want to, I would say you guys and like the 4th house transit babies, you want to be mindful about what you share online. You just want to make sure that you're not putting too much personal information out there. I don't think anyone should really do that, but you guys especially, just because of that vulnerability. Now, a really great thing about Uranus Gemini moving through the 12th is this can bring about hidden skills and talents. So I love this for you guys. You can become a lot more aware because of like memory resurfacing. Basically, it's almost like there's this feeling of coming back to your, I guess your most enlightened and like mindful state, or at least that's the goal, is being pushed in that direction. So in coming kind of back to yourself, you can uncover or rediscover certain talents and skills you have that maybe in the past you were discouraged from having them, or maybe you were kind of told to like shush, like you can't really express yourself the way that you maybe have wanted to. So this can lead to you reclaiming your skills, reclaiming talents, and reclaiming your voice. Oh my God, that's so important. This is amazing energy for engaging in creative arts and practices that utilize writing. And this can include too, like utilizing illustration, anything where you like have a pen or pencil, whatever, and you're like writing on a piece of paper. Obviously, I know everybody today types, but whatever, you get the point. So writing, journaling, so good right now. You might even take up a new form of therapy, especially one that is progressive and also relatively new. Like it makes me think of like, I think it's called like EMDR. I know that that's not like super new now. It's kind of been around for a bit, but it's newer at least. And it is pretty like revolutionary. So this can lead to some type of revolutionary like therapy related experience. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about this is you can undergo a big shift to your actual belief systems, whether it be related to like religion, spirituality. I mean, it's going to be more so in that like sector of ideologies. It's going to be a little bit more like spiritual, but for some it's religion as well. So this can be a really, really good thing for sure. However, for some, it might be a little bit challenging. Maybe certain things you believed in, you've come to find, maybe you were a little bit manipulated into believing them, or maybe they don't align anymore with like who you feel you are or what you value, what you prioritize, things like that. But at the end of the day, this can definitely be a really, really healing experience. Reframing beliefs, in my opinion, is never really a bad thing, especially if it gives you an opportunity to kind of assess any thought process in your life that is kind of holding you back, keeping you small, or just like not putting you in the mental state to like actually acknowledge yourself and be proud of how far you've come, things like that. All right, now we're going to talk about Leo ascendant, or if Gemini Uranus is going to be moving through your 11th house. I actually really love this one. It's a little bit crazy, but there are a lot of advantages. So the great thing about this transit period is it can allow for brand new social relationships, but specifically ones that can like propel you professionally and allow for more esteem, praise, and acknowledgement to go your way. Now, On that note, the tricky thing about this transit period when it comes to like receiving more esteem and praise and acclaim in terms of like the groups you interact with, you can also be on the receiving end of more attention. Attention can go either way. It can be great attention. It can be controversial attention. Uranus, Gemini, it's wonky, it's weird. So it can be really hard to control the narrative in a social sense here. Does that make sense? Like, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of an example, like the rumor mill or like the telephone game, you know, where one person says something, it goes to the other person. It might even be too that some of the engagements and like activities you embark upon, your intentions might not always align with the outcome, or it might be that people misconstrue your intentions. So you want to be mindful during this time not to take things too personally. Some people are going to have a really strong, a lot of people are going to have a strong reaction to you, but some of these reactions might be blown out of proportion. They might just be really intense. So your presence can be provocative during this time, or provoking, maybe that's a better word for it. Some provocative though, for sure. So you might be forced to kind of come more out of your shell. You might also be forced to step into the public eye, which is another thing that can draw more attention towards you. So being in the public eye, this could note having to engage with more like public speaking, maybe writing and being published, having a presence on technology, social media, like all of that is possible, but you might be in a position where people are wanting to hear what you have to say, basically. There can be more social influence that you have on others. So that's another benefit here is in people having such strong reactions to you. They might, look up to you. They might look to you as like a voice of reason or, reasoning, or like a voice worth hearing and listening to, which is definitely a good thing. Now, that said, you can also just generally undergo a big change to your sense of community. This can include like a change in colleagues, a change in friends. That's very common. Or, meeting new colleagues, meeting new friends, things like that. Now, I also want to say with Uranus moving through the 11th is you can be given a new role in your actual community. So if you have been wanting to like get involved in politics, this might be the time to do so. If you've been wanting to like become someone who advocates for others or get into law, this might be time to do so. So this can lead to very like fruitful results when it comes to getting involved in your community and taking on kind of like a role of leadership in your community. Now let's talk about Virgo ascendant, or if Gemini Uranus is going to be moving through your 10th house. This is huge for your career and your professional life as a whole. Your sense of purpose, that might be a better way to word this, because it's not always just about career, but just literally how you contribute and what you contribute to the world at large. Your spiritual soul purpose, basically, and how you can best utilize like your karmic gifts, things like that. So on one hand, this is going to bring really big changes, especially unexpected changes. You might wind up in a career field that you never thought you would wind up in, or it's possible that you meet some social connections, like you undergo a lot of professional networking, and it just completely transforms your career in a way that you never imagined. So you can meet some very, very like esteemed and lucrative, people out there that really help you get to where you're going. Think of it like this. It's not always what you know. Sometimes it's who you know. That can definitely happen here. Now, listen up. This is very important. So with Virgo ascendant and Gemini 10th house naturally being so much about technology because they're both ruled by Mercury, your presence online is so, so important. More people might be paying attention to you. More people might be listening to you. More people might be looking up to you. However, if you're not cautious with your words, you could get kind of like caught up in controversy. Uranus is a very polarizing planet. So when it's moving through the 10th house, it's kind of similar to what I was talking about with Uranus moving through the 11th, where you can be on the receiving end of like, maybe you're a little more provocative during this time, or maybe there's some controversy to you in your career. So you have to be really, really mindful. You want to remain on your absolute best behavior. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't like stand your ground or speak up when you absolutely need to. Having boundaries and, demanding respect, that's fine. But overstepping or, swerving out of your lane, so to speak, that can have some unfavorable consequences and outcomes. So you do want to be very cautious with what you say online, especially because the 10th house has so much to do with reputation. The 10th house also represents like the peak of our achievements and esteem. You're at the top of the mountain. So it's like the higher you go, the harder you fall. You want to make sure you stay on that mountain and you don't misstep. Like you want to pay attention to every single step you're taking, because you can undergo some major, major advancements in your professional life, especially ones that further propel you to the public eye or just warrant a lot more eyeballs that are, kind of looking at you. Gemini is also a very voyeuristic sign in that way. And it's a mirror, it's a parrot. So think about it as like having a bunch of eyes on you, and you need to be very mindful with what you say. Now, in a favorable sense, this could note more public speaking. This could note the things that you say really resonating with others and having an impact. This could note, like, for some of you, depending on what you do for work or just what you do in your personal life, starting like some type of movement or taking up like a new role in your community that warrants more attention and like more kind of like you're granted some leadership, I guess is really what I'm trying to say. Now, this is another transit, Uranus moving through the 10th, that can lead to increased use of technology in your professional life. It might be that you have to kind of, get a little more with the times in order to make progress in your professional life, but you can undergo an unexpected career change, that might require you, if you don't already, to kind of utilize technology. Now we're going to talk about Libra ascendant, or Uranus Gemini transiting the 9th house. This is another pretty fun one. Well, it's complex, but there are benefits to it. On one hand, let's talk about education and academics, because that is what the 9th house rules over. This could lead to a major change in your actual schooling, especially like depending on how old you are. For some of you though, this could note going back to school. Maybe you're suddenly hit with a bug to, pursue a new education or go back to school if you weren't able to complete your education for whatever reason. For some of you who are currently in school, this could lead to a major unexpected shift that inspires you to completely shift your major, or like maybe you haven't fully graduated yet and you change your degree at the last minute, or maybe you get another degree when you weren't really planning on it. There's some type of curveball that can definitely be thrown into your education, academic life. Now, depending on what else is going on for you, Uranus Gemini moving through the 9th for some of you can inspire a complete like disengagement of education, because maybe you have issues with like the academic institutions. Remember, Gemini, Uranus, and the 9th house especially just have a lot to do with like government and societal institutions. So this could lead to you dropping out or taking a hiatus, kind of like logging off, or signing out, checking out, clocking out, not wanting to engage or like further involve yourself in an institution that is frankly maybe like not the most supportive or helpful. Now, another thing that can happen with this transit is undergoing a major change to like your actual philosophical ideologies. So don't be surprised if you undergo kind of like a nihilistic period where maybe you feel a little bit empty, or maybe things just don't make sense. Maybe you're searching and yearning for something new enlightenment, new inspiration. So, there can be kind of this almost melancholy energy here at times where maybe it's just that you have reached a point with your spiritual journey and like your belief systems where things just aren't really working for you anymore. Like, again, maybe you're lacking inspiration, maybe you're lacking motivation. So this can lead you very much on like a kind of a self-led journey where you're trying to discover or rediscover what it is that fuels your faith. So you can undergo a lot of kind of trial and error, ups and downs when it comes to what you believe in, like spirituality, religion. Like you might go from atheist to Catholic to, something else. Like it's just always up and down here kind of until you like actually get settled. But even then you might incorporate a variety of beliefs from a variety of different, cultures and religions and spiritual practices. So it's just kind of you defining or not defining, but it's you uncovering and discovering like what you really believe in. Now, on a social level, you might undergo a complete social overhaul. This can be as a result of like undergoing like a change to your beliefs, your education, but it can also note actual moving and relocation because the 9th house does have a lot to do with travel. This can even note Uranus being such a big, broad, large planet, like actually moving abroad, like moving to a completely different country. That's very possible here. So don't be surprised if like the location you're at right now is not at all where you wind up when this transit is like halfway through, ending, whatever the case may be. Like you might even move several times throughout this transit. Your actual environment and community and like your physical geographical location can change a lot. And going back to what I said about like undergoing a social overhaul, that's very common with Uranus Gemini moving through the 9th. It's going to inspire a lot of shifts to like your actual social life and the people you hang around with. You might even have this moment, this coming to where you're like, oh, the company that you keep is like very much a reflection of who you are as well. So that can kind of maybe be the push you need to make some changes to your friend groups. Now we're going to talk about Scorpio ascendant, or if Gemini Uranus is moving through your 8th house. So this is a very, very interesting one. On one hand, a huge benefit of this transit is that it's going to allow for much, much more innovation, more brilliant problem solving skills. Like, think of your brain, this is such a weird thing to say, it's going to become almost like a machine. Like, your dedication will increase, your discipline will increase, your focus will increase. You might even become a little bit more one-track minded. I know that that might be confusing because Gemini is kind of associated with being really scatterbrained, but when it's in the 8th house, which is such an intense, concentrated, and in some cases a very challenging house for sure, what can end up happening is it's almost kind of like you get condensed and the energy becomes so dense and concentrated that there's like, I don't even know how to really like verbalize what I'm trying to explain, but basically you can become so dedicated and focused on what you want to do that you just, that fast-paced energy of Gemini starts to really pay off, basically. It's like you suddenly start working smarter, not harder. Does that make sense? Like, that quick-witted nature of Gemini can really work to your benefit when it comes to solving life's problems for you. So this is a great transit in that regard. Like, your actual intelligence can increase. Your skills can sharpen. You can really hone what it is that you're really, really good at. That said, if you have really big dreams and goals or scholastic hopes, like if you are going to school to be a doctor or something, this is a really good transit for that. It just really forces you to grow and expand and challenge yourself on a mental and intellectual, even on a creative level. Like, you are going to evolve and grow and become like the next level of who you're meant to be. So this is a very special transit for you guys. However, your mental health is really, really important here because you're going to be under so much like cognitive pressure kind of. So you want to make sure that you're not abandoning your personal life or sacrificing like self-care in order to achieve your dreams and goals. Like, you want to make sure that you still have moderation and balance in your life. Otherwise, you can get burnt out very, very, very quickly on a mental level. So you want to be really mindful of your mental health during this time. Another thing that can happen here that is a little bit kind of is you are more prone to unexpected curveballs, especially when it comes to potential for like undergoing a loss. Now, this doesn't mean that it's necessarily a material loss. So I don't want you to worry. It doesn't have to be tangible. It doesn't have to involve a person. It might just be a loss when it comes to like something about your identity or your beliefs. It could also be some type of loss when it comes to like, I would say in terms of social life, Gemini energy is pretty platonic. It has a lot to do with peer relationships. So if there is some type of like tangible loss, it might be a friend in terms of like not being their friend anymore. There might be a falling out. However, what I will say is in this falling out, odds are it's probably a relationship that you knew was on the way out already, or you were already skeptical, kind of distrusting and suspicious of this person. So Uranus Gemini moving through the 8th can just kind of give you that push you need to finally get the job done and be like, okay, bye, I'm moving on from this relationship. So that can definitely happen. Your commitments can change during this time. The 8th house has a lot to do with commitment. Uranus and Gemini can throw a wrench into some of your plans, especially plans that you might have already committed to before the transit actually begins for you. So you want to be really mindful about what that means to you. And you want to kind of take preventative care. Just go over like all of your commitments, everything that you've agreed to. If you are signing a contract throughout this transit, which like you probably will at some point, you want to make sure you have a lawyer look it over. You want to make sure that you read it over 50 million thousand times. You want to take precaution. You want to take preventative care. You want to be as prepared as possible when it comes to contracts. This is because Uranus, again, it's unpredictable. It's unconventional. It's surprising. Gemini can be a little bit sneaky. And Gemini, of course, has a lot to do with like words, the written word, signatures. So be very mindful. You might find out during this time a secret that other people want you to keep, but it's like too juicy and too good. So there can also be some controversy when it comes to like the rumor mill, gossip, having information that you do not want to necessarily keep to yourself, information that is like really, really important, but maybe your tasks, non-disclosure agreements, things like that. The last thing I will say about this transit as well is you can experience some type of shift to your finances. It's not necessarily the same as the second house, which has more to do with earned wealth and income. The eighth house has more to do with inheritances and debts. So on one hand, this could note having some debts to pay off, especially like a debt you didn't even know you were accruing. So that said, take preventative care and look over your finances. Be very mindful. Make sure there's like nothing missing. It can also lead to an unexpected inheritance or like the acquisition of an asset, especially one, again, that you didn't expect to receive. Now we're going to talk about Sagittarius ascendant or Gemini Uranus transiting the seventh house. This is going to bring major changes to your relationships in life. The seventh house rules over relationships and partnerships, specifically one-on-one relationships, and that can include like business partnerships. So I'm going to kind of start there. This can lead to a brand new business relationship, especially one that is something of like you and another person starting your own company, starting your own business. You're kind of a duo, right? Like if you've been thinking of going into business with your friend, this might be the transit, you need to like have that push. There is kind of an entrepreneurial spirit to those with Sag Rising. I wouldn't say kind of, there definitely is. I don't know why I said kind of. There is an entrepreneurial spirit to those with Sag Rising. So having Uranus moving through the seventh can kind of connect you with people who like see your vision and want to help you. People who want to like invest in you. That's the way this can manifest. However, if you are in business with someone and, for some of you, this could know a break, cutting ties with that person. It's really going to depend on what else Uranus is an aspect to, but just know business relationships in general can become really, really prominent during this time. On a romantic level, your romantic life's going to shift. For those of you who are single, this could lead to you meeting someone that you did not expect to meet. Again, Uranus is very unexpected and unpredictable. You might meet this person online. You might meet them through friends or colleagues. It's a very common way that this energy can manifest. If you are single, this is going to just inevitably bring a lot of changes to that relationship status. So buckle up and get ready. If you're in a relationship, this can lead to an unexpected shift. Now, for some of you, depending on what Uranus is also like in aspect to in your natal, this could lead to a surprise pregnancy, that you didn't know you were pregnant and you get pregnant and you're like, oh my God, our relationship is changing now. So your relationship can undergo an unexpected shift. However, if you are in a not so good relationship, I would be really mindful during this time because Uranus, Gemini, having so much to do with community and it's a platonic energy, this could lead to third-party interference. I'm not saying this to scare you or worry you. This doesn't mean you need to go snoop through your partner's phone, but if you're dating someone who's not the most trustworthy, or maybe they've cheated in the past, maybe they've cheated in previous relationships, I would be very mindful. Think about what your values are, think about like how much you really trust this person, because Gemini Uranus moving through the seventh, it can show a new person showing up in that relationship, which is part of why I was saying like you could get pregnant. You know what I mean? You could gain in-laws if you're in a relationship but not yet married. So this could note, finally being married into the family. But if you're in a not so good relationship, this could lead to some type of infidelity or a separation, a divorce, a broken off engagement. Uranus, it's inconsistent, it's erratic, it throws a wrench into plans. So you have to be really mindful. Those of you who are not in the best relationships, this transit can kind of point to like the end times. You know what I'm saying? And I also want to say there is a fast-paced energy to this transit. So things can change overnight in your relationship. Like you could be very, very single one day and next week you are practically engaged. So you do still want to be mindful that you're pacing yourself because you can get swept up in like a whirlwind romantic experience. Now, I know this is kind of contradictory, but Uranus moving through the seventh, if you do undergo a breakup, it might not last. It might take a few times to really stick. That's just because Uranus, Gemini, it's going to be inconsistent. It's going to be wonky. It's going to be all over the place. So anything you kind of commit to or agree to, it's subject to change. It just is. Do with that what you will. Just in general, your relationships can shift. For some of you, like especially those of you who just aren't interested in romance and you don't really care about business, this could lead to brand new friendships, new social connections. This is another one though that can also lead to like having to say goodbye to some friends, or maybe some of your relationships just fizzle out because of a big change in priorities, values, and character. Keep in mind, Uranus being very shocking, Gemini being a little sneaky, people can surprise you during this time. Like people's true colors are going to come out. So if you do have anyone in your life who is not meant to be there, I promise you, they're going to let it be known. And you might see some qualities of people that you thought you really knew and trusted. And you're going to be like, oh my God, I had no idea who you were. I had no idea. Now we're going to talk about Capricorn ascendant, or if Gemini Uranus is going to be moving through your 6th house. This is so important to your daily routine and your health. So let me start with daily routine. Gemini Uranus moving through the 6th is inevitably going to change how you operate on a day-to-day basis. You're going to develop new lifestyle habits. You might even relocate or move during this time, especially for a job. That's another thing that can happen. Like you can actually move for a professional opportunity. Just because the 6th house has a lot to do with responsibility and work. Now, on that note, your responsibilities can change. They can also become a lot more tedious, a lot more menial. It might be that you have a lot of things in your life you have been neglecting taking care of that have been building up kind of behind the scenes, though. Think of it as like you keep shoving things under the bed, and all of a sudden, before you know it, there's no more room under the bed, and you look under there, and there's like a whole little gremlin living under your bed, and you didn't even know. Like you might be literally setting up spaces in your life for things to kind of fall through the cracks, or for little tiny gremlins to set up camp for themselves. Like you kind of need to undergo a purge during this time. And if you aren't willing to like take preventative care and like actually kind of take the steps to sort of making some purges and lifestyle changes, they're going to be forced upon you. And I promise you, you don't want them to be forced upon you. You want to have control. You want to have like the consent in the situation and like actually go ahead and initiate those changes. Now, your health can also shift during this time. In some cases, this can lead to a medical miracle. Like, I'm not kidding. Uranus rules over miracles. It rules over wishes fulfilled. So this can literally lead to some type of medical breakthrough. And this is something that a lot of different people can kind of experience during this time, depending on where it's transiting or what aspects you're going to be having as well. But this could lead to like a new diagnosis, some type of clarity or closure relating to your health. For some of you, this could lead to a lot of weight loss if you are someone who's been wanting to lose some weight. This could lead to weight gain for some of you that have been wanting to gain some weight. Like if you have a health related goal or journey, this is a really good time to embark upon it, especially because like during the first 2 years of Uranus being in Gemini, Saturn's going to be in Aries, which promotes physical wellness. Neptune's going to be in Aries. So you do have the universe on your side to like really harness your sense of health. Now, in terms of career, this can note a big career shift as well. Kind of like how I was saying, you could relocate for a career or professional opportunity. This could note getting involved in a career you never really thought you'd get involved in. This could also note a very unexpected promotion or an unexpected referral, like your boss referring you to a different company or a different employer that like is much better for you, but you kind of didn't expect it. Like professional things can be happening behind the scenes that suddenly just like you finally get informed about them and you're like, oh, okay, that's really cool. So you can undergo some surprises in your career and professional life as well. I also forgot to mention when it does come to health, your mental health and your cognitive health is really important. That said, be very mindful. This could note, taking up a new type of therapy. This can also note, again, like some type of medical miracle when it comes to your cognitive health and your mental health. Like maybe you finally kind of reach a really, really important breakthrough that you've been needing that really helps you harness a sense of optimism, faith, and joy. Now we're going to talk about Aquarius Rising, or if Gemini Uranus is going to be moving through your 5th house. This is so exciting for romance. Uranus Gemini is inevitably going to bring really exciting changes to your romantic life. So if you're single, buckle up because this is definitely going to lead to a brand new relationship. And it can also happen very, very quickly. It can happen like overnight. And you can meet this person like when and where you least expect it. This can also be someone you've met before, but maybe the spark was never there, but for whatever reason you meet again and the spark is definitely there. For those of you who have never experienced that phenomena, I promise it is very, very real. So just know you might wind up dating someone who you've seen around town, but maybe you never got the chance to connect, and then all of a sudden something changes overnight. This can also note getting with like a friend or someone you've known for a while, but again, maybe that romance was never really there. And then all of a sudden overnight, it's like, whoa, I suddenly have a lot of feelings for you. Okay. So there can be kind of this like realization moment of like, oh, I actually really like you and want to be with you. That's amazing. Surprise pregnancy. I have to say it. You're at an increased risk with a Gemini 5th house with Uranus moving there for getting pregnant in an unexpected and unplanned way. Even if you are on birth control or using protection, Uranus loves a hurdle. The more obstacles that you have between you and getting pregnant, that's just a fun challenge for Uranus. And Uranus is willing to defy the odds. That's what it does. It rules over statistical anomalies. Hello. So you got to be very careful. Even being careful, though, might not work. You just need a prayer. You need a wish and a hope and a prayer. Just hope for the best. I'm kind of being serious here. So be very mindful about that. For some of you who want to get pregnant, this is a really good time to start trying. Uranus is kind of on your side here, so enjoy. Now, for those of you who are already in relationships, this time period is going to bring about a lot of unexpected changes, kind of like the pregnancy thing. So just anticipate a major shift to undergo, like in your actual romantic life and in your relationship. This can be really, really exciting. Like this could lead to relocating with your partner, moving in with your partner for those who are still living apart, getting engaged, getting proposed to, like getting married. Like there's some really exciting things that can happen. However, if you're in a not so good relationship, or you're in a relationship where the logistics are very, very complicated, this could lead to a breakup or a separation, especially if the relationship, like, it's really sad, but what you might come to find, like some of you, is that you and your partner, even if love and respect is there, you're just not compatible. Like you don't want the same things. So that can definitely happen for those that have, Uranus moving through the 5th. You can kind of have this realization of like, oh, like I want the best for you and I like you and I respect you, but like we don't want the same things, or like we're just not compatible in that way. So maybe you stay friends, but you decide to like call it quits on the actual romantic component of the relationship. Now, for those of you who are like just straight up in bad relationships, yes, this can give the push you need to finally like end it and call things off. And it might even be something that occurs like really, really fast in an unexpected way. Like maybe you've had it, like you got the final straw and you're like, all right, I'm done, I'm out. And the next day, all your stuff's packed and you fled the scene, Another thing that can happen with this transit is more attention. You can receive more attention for your skills, your talents, your gifts. You can also explore brand new hobbies. Like you might uncover some type of talent for something you didn't even know you had. So there is an exciting energy of like self-discovery here. You can also undergo a change to your appearance, your style, your aesthetics. So just anticipate major changes to your actual relationship with self, like newfound confidence, newfound interest. Like you can even get involved in a group that better reflects your hobbies and your interests. So like maybe you discovered that like you love to read and you love to write and you love to analyze literature. So you join a book club. You know what I mean? Like something really wholesome like that, like getting involved in spaces of people who have like-minded interests and hobbies. I do want to end this specific transit by letting you know that the 5th house, and having so much to do with self and like talents and gifts, Uranus being kind of a controversial and provocative planet, you might be on the receiving end of some attention that maybe you don't know what to do with, you don't know how to deal with. Basically your reputation can become really prominent during this time. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, so you don't need to worry, but you might ruffle some feathers, or you might have to stand your ground, or you might have something about your social life and your reputation that you need to address or maybe amend. Maybe you need to repair something. Now, I want to say, if Uranus is moving through the 5th and you do undergo a breakup, just know it might not last. It might more be a hiatus or like a brief separation, but Uranus Gemini, it's inconsistent, it's wonky, it's all over the place. Certain decisions and commitments, they might not last. And the same is true for like making a commitment to be in a relationship. Like if you enter a relationship or you accept a proposal, honestly, anything can happen. I will say this is more so going to be for people who like are already on the fence. Like if you accept a proposal, but logistically, the relationship like isn't working, or emotionally it's not working, like maybe you get what I'm saying. There's an incompatibility somewhere and you accept that proposal, then like, yeah, it's probably not going to last. You know what I mean? Like it might not be something that comes out of the blue. I mean, it might, like that's possible, but sometimes it's just a matter of you saying yes when you should have said no, or vice versa. All right, now we're going to talk about the last one, Pisces Rising, saving the best for last. So this also applies if you have Gemini Uranus moving through the 4th house. This is going to bring major changes to your actual personal relationships and your home life. So first things first, the most obvious, you might move during this time. You might move and relocate multiple times during this time. No, this does not mean that life is suddenly going to become really unstable and crazy. For some of you, it might. Let's be real. But it could also note like financial growth that kind of keeps happening that allows you to continue upgrading. Or maybe you start a new job somewhere and you're doing really well and they're like, hey, we have a higher paying, salary or position, but you kind of have to move to a different state. It could also be that you move like within the same community, but just change houses, whatever. So that can happen during this time, okay? Another thing that can happen is gaining a new family member, especially with like Saturn and Aries, Neptune and Aries. Like you can undergo a lot of new beginnings. So this can note gaining a new family member, like maybe someone in your family gets pregnant. Maybe you get pregnant. That's another thing. Uranus, Gemini moving through the 4th can increase your fertility in really weird ways. And you can undergo a surprise or unplanned pregnancy. And this includes even if you're using protection. I said it with Uranus moving through the 5th, but Uranus loves a challenge. Honestly, the more barriers you put between you and pregnancy, the more Uranus is like, all right, let's go. Uranus rules over statistical anomalies, okay? Expect rare, freaky stuff to take place when it comes to like your womb, your fertility, your home life, your family. Now, in speaking of your family and weirdness, this can lead to an exposed family secret. This might be kind of an open secret that like the family has known, but maybe it was never like officially confirmed. More a rumor or more something that maybe a few family members knew, but not everybody. So this can lead to some kind of like outing where suddenly your family life becomes much more like, oh, that makes sense. Maybe you receive some type of like emotional clarity and healing as a result of this exposed secret. And this is just because, again, Uranus is really shocking. Gemini has a lot to do with communication and information. This can also lead to a really shocking reveal that like it's not a secret, but some new event takes place in the family and it's just like really surprising and really shocking and it shakes up the family dynamic. So that's a way this can manifest too, is like maybe it's like a couple in your family that's been together for like 30 years, they divorce. You know what I mean? Like something like that could happen. If you are married, your marriage can undergo a really big shift during this time. This can again refer to like a pregnancy, relocating, moving. If you're not in the best marriage, it could definitely lead to divorce. I hate to say it, but if you're not in a good marriage, of course, everyone has free will. Of course, nothing is inevitable. And of course, you can attempt to fix things like go to couples counseling or things like that. But if someone is like not wanting it to work and they're not doing the work, then yes, this can give you that kind of push you need to finally leave that situation. So you want to be really mindful with that. And I will say too, I know this is very random, but if you are wanting to leave your partner, but maybe you get intimate one last time as a goodbye, some people do that, whatever. No judgment. You could get pregnant doing that. That's what I'm saying. Like Uranus will throw a wrench in your plans. So you need to be really mindful. Like if you make a decision, try to really commit to that decision. You just don't want to do anything that might, fudge up the decision basically. Now on that note, Uranus moving through the 4th, if you do undergo a separation, it might not last. I know it's crazy, but it might not. Of course, if it needs to last, then you need to commit to that decision. But sometimes it's a matter of taking a hiatus or taking like a brief break as opposed to like a complete separation. It could also note that you just have to redefine your relationship or make changes. Maybe you find that your relationship thrives better when you're sleeping in separate rooms. You know what I mean? Like not every couple has to be sleeping in the same bed every night. Like I like my privacy and stuff. So it's like maybe you find that you are better together when you have different blankets on the bed and you're like sleeping with your own blankets, like little things like that, like just redefining the relationship. Now on an emotional level, Uranus Gemini can really shake up your feelings. You might find that you are increased like hormones. You're feeling a little more emotionally agitated. More emotional stimulation, you're quicker to anger, you're quicker to react and respond. You might even embark on a new like therapy related journey as a result of family like revelations, especially like memory resurface, similar to Uranus moving through the 12th. So you want to be really mindful on an emotional level because your emotions might just be all over the place like a crazy roller coaster. There can be some emotional instabilities, but to me, that's just a sign that there's something going on an emotional level that is unhealed and it's unchecked and you need to confront that. Like emotional stability can be very, very hard to access and maintain, but in order to live like a happy and healthy and sustainable life, it's definitely a goal to try to find some emotional security. So this transit can kind of give you that motivation or inspiration, or at least make it so that your emotions are so uncomfortable sometimes to deal with that you're like, okay, I'm done. I have to make a change now. Okay. That is the gist, basically, of all of the Uranus transits moving through the signs and, the horoscopes for each ascendant. So let me know in the comments if that made sense. Let me know where Uranus is going to be transiting for you. I am, I'm excited and I'm a little nervous for this transit. I think it's going to be, at the very least, very, very entertaining. Thank you so much for watching my video. Do not forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate the support so, so much. And of course, my website is in the description for anyone who wants to book a reading with me. And don't forget to sign up for my email list if you would like to receive exclusive promotions and astrological insights.